Micah Parsons, Terry McLaurin, Brian Robinson. There are plenty of not only trade rumors, but actual trades going on in the NFL right now. We break it all down here next on Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready. Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
You are Locked On NFL. Welcome into the show. I'm your host, not the Madman. Filling in for the Madman today, I am Kevin Ostreicher, and we are here with you today on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here on this Friday edition of the morning edition of Locked On NFL and making Locked On NFL both a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. Are free and available on all podcasting platforms, including in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the channel, and in audio form where you can follow along and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. 5 days per week here on Locked On NFL, bringing you that daily NFL coverage, both in the morning, usually with the Madman, sometimes with me, and then you also have in the afternoon the barbershop with Tony Wiggins. And here on Locked On NFL, we are bringing you that daily NFL coverage with our local experts. And here today, our Locked On NFL expert is Nick Cattles from Locked On Patriots. And Nick, I was kind of talking about this yesterday. You get excited for the preseason for like the first half of the first game, and then you're just kind of like, all right, can we move it along here? Get to September. We're almost there. But look, the NFL's given us no shortage of things to talk about. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a busy couple days, and it might be even busier over the next few days with, of course, cut downs coming up. So it should be very interesting. NFL teams, Kevin, they've been more active when it comes to trade talks over the past several years versus, 10 years prior to that. You would never or hardly ever see NFL trades, especially in season, but things have kind of picked up the last few years.
Yeah, and I know that, the NFL doesn't have necessarily the trade allure that the NBA or the MLB does at times, but, you're right. It seems like some of those big time names, either whether it's requesting trades for leverage or actually getting moved, we've seemed to have a lot of that over the last couple of years. Like you said, one of those names is Micah Parsons. Obviously, Mike has made it clear that, he's wanted to stay in Dallas, but now that no longer appears the case, as it's just gotten too much for him over the last handful of months. He's requested a trade out. Brian Schottenheimer recently said that he feels good about Micah Parsons playing in week one, but apparently, there haven't really been any conversations, according to reports, between the team and Micah Parsons' agent. There was a whole controversy with that. Jerry Jones had an appearance earlier on Thursday and said that, quote, Mike is a great player, not a good player, but a great player who knows more than anyone that it's a team thing. Talked about kind of putting the puzzle together so that they have some other people out there playing with Micah, called it the art of the deal. So Landon McCool and Marcus Mosher of Locked On Cowboys, they talked about the edge room right now, the pass rushers, defensive linemen in Dallas, not named Micah Parsons. So I want to play that clip to give us perspective on what else they have on the roster, and then Nick and I'll talk about it here on the other side.
Ezra Raku is a guy that I definitely don't want to skimp on snaps. I want to give him opportunities, but I'm also excited about Sam Williams. I'm also excited about Marshawn Neal, and I've also paid a lot of money for Fowler to be here, and that's not even including the guy whose contract we're waiting to get signed. So it's just a position that I had high hopes for, but I actually came in here and I think they've exceeded those hopes, because all the guys, we need one of these guys to hit. It feels like kind of all of them are hitting in some form or fashion.
Yeah, you're still looking for that other guy to be like the bona fide guy that can play opposite of Micah Parsons and be like the DeMarcus Lawrence, right? Like be the other guy that can consistently win one-on-one matchups. My guess is long-term, it's probably going to be Donovan Ezra-Raku. It might not be that way as a rookie, but that you do have options.
Well, we know, Nick, if you want to have a guy next to Micah Parsons, you first of all have to have Micah Parsons on the field in the first place. So the art of the deal, how do you kind of feel like Dallas has been handling this? How do you think Mike has been handling this? And do you agree with Brian Schottenheimer that, that confidence is there that he will be on the field in week one?
Well, I feel like Schottenheimer has to have that confidence, because what else is he going to say? If he comes out and says, we're a little shaky, it's not going to make the Dallas fan base feel great. It's not going to make the players feel great on that team. I understand Jerry gets deals done. He does. You look at Dak Prescott, you look at CD Lamb. He gets these deals done. But for the life of me, Kevin, I've never understood why he waits as long as he does. He waits until the bitter end to get these contracts done. You could have wrapped up Micah Parsons after his third year. Get him paid, get it done, get it out of the way. But they waited and dragged their feet with Dak Prescott. They waited and dragged their feet with CeeDee Lamb. They're waiting and dragging their feet with Parsons. And sometimes guys are going to get angry. Now, let's all be honest here, Kevin. Parsons doesn't really have leverage. He can come out, he can say he wants out, he wants to be traded, he needs to be paid this, he needs to be paid that. But as we've seen in the NFL, the owners have the leverage. And unless Parsons wants them as game checks and truly sit out, and if he sits out, that puts him in further issue with the Cowboys, obviously, because they still have his rights. What is he going to do? So I still think Parsons ends up playing for Dallas this year to at least play it out. And I know Schefter came out and said they might be headed to a divorce at some point. I don't think that point is soon. Could be wrong, but history tells me something will get done. And if not, Parsons will just play out the string.
Who do you think needs the other more? Because obviously both feel like they have the leverage. As you mentioned, it's like, okay, who actually has it and who doesn't? Obviously, Micah Parsons is a generational talent. So I assume that the answer to that question, most people would lean the Cowboys need Parsons more than Parsons needs the Cowboys. But where do you stand?
Yeah, I mean, you listening to the Cowboys guys just a moment ago, they're talking about, oh, you need somebody opposite of Parsons to consistently win. First, that's pretty tough in the NFL to have two edge players that consistently win their one-on-ones. So to me, Parsons' premier position, you cannot allow that guy to walk out. He's one of the best defensive players in all of football. And if you have him walk or you trade him, then you're putting a lot of pressure on Ozaraku and other guys that would have to step up significantly to make that Cowboys defense better. So, Parsons is, to me, vital to the program, and I have no idea how you could let him go.
I agree. And there are a lot of situations out there like that right now. I know Trey Hendrickson, Nick, is another one of those in Cincinnati where just like, and I know that defense is in a lot worse shape than Dallas's is, and Dallas really isn't in great shape either. But another team in the NFC East that has a couple of trade situations going on is the Washington Commanders. Terry McLaurin obviously has requested a trade. Brian Robinson, that situation has escalated very quickly and seems like he could be on his way out. Maybe today. I don't know. It seems like there's a split headed there. David Harrison of Locked On Commanders, he reacted to the news of Terry McLaurin being activated from the PUP list because there's also a physical component to the Terry McLaurin situation as well. So we'll play David's update here, and then we'll react to it.
Another day out here in Ashburn, and another new development in the Terry McLaurin situation. This is David Harrison of the Locked On Commanders podcast, and out here on Saturday for what we thought was going to be kind of a light, breezy, early morning practice. News coming out before practice that Terry McLaurin has been activated off of the physically unable to perform or PUP list. Was not seen out here at practice. Not a big surprise as the team tends to handle injury situations with a ramp-up period. That's exactly what head coach Dan Quinn said that the team is doing. But it's also hard to deny that there is this little nagging in the back of everybody's minds on whether or not removing Terry McLaurin off the PUP was another part of the tactics between the two sides to getting Terry McLaurin on the field, new contract or new contract. So for more on that, my opinions on that and everything else Washington Commanders related, make sure you check out the Locked On Commanders podcast 5 days a week, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So that update from David came a couple of days ago. Dan Quinn yesterday said that for Terry McLaurin, could be getting closer to a Commander's return. Now, what does that mean? Is that contractually? Is that just health-wise? We don't know. And obviously with the Brian Robinson situation, Nick, a lot kind of hanging over the Commanders' heads at this point, right before the season starts.
Yeah, I don't know how much value Robinson truly has. You talk about the running back position, and I know everybody's saying, oh, the running back position deserves more. And look at it. It's almost like a renaissance because Saquon Barkley had a fantastic season behind the best offensive line in football. Pump the brakes. It's still a running back position. You can still find guys to play that position easier than finding other premier positions. So he's never broken 800 yards. I don't know if he's going to be a guy that gets you anything better than what, a 4th, 5th round pick, probably a 5th, maybe even a 6th. So we'll see what happens there. McLaurin's the big one. And, it's interesting. McLaurin wants to be paid more than DK Metcalf, and the Commanders and Adam Peters are looking at Cortland Sutton and saying, well, that's more like it. Sutton's making, I think, around $23 million a year on his new deal. Metcalf's making over $30 million. Metcalf's a couple of years younger than McLaurin. That's a problem for Terry. But, man, it just feels to me, I don't know about you, Kevin, but I'm surprised that a deal hasn't been done yet. McLaurin is very important to this operation. He is just vital for Jaden Daniels and his growth and his continued development at the NFL level. And when they were, going against New England in joint practices and in the preseason game, you could see the drop off. It is precipitous at the wide receiver position without McLaurin out there. It feels to me like Washington should be more desperate. Maybe they're waiting and pushing because, again, owners have the leverage. But I feel the same way about McLaurin as I do Parsons. I just think he'll stay in Washington. He's just too important.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes with these trade requests and situations, it truly is for the leverage and being like, hey, I want out, but really I just want some more money. Please give me more money.
Yeah.
Like that's some, I went through that with Lamar Jackson where, he requested his trade, wasn't really sure what was going on there. Eventually they were able to come to a new agreement. Obviously quarterback is a lot different than wide receiver, but the sentiment remains there. So to me, I think that, yeah, you're right. Jaden McDaniels needs someone like Terry McLaurin. Debo coming in is a good addition for them, but we know that Debo is not like the Debo of 5 years ago. And, you have to factor in injuries with him. And obviously the component to Terry with his injury too. Plus you got Daniels and McLaurin having that connection together already. So that part also is very, very big. Teams that are looking at running back help right now, according to Daniel Rossini, that's coming out early on Thursday, that includes teams like the Saints, the Browns, and the Chiefs. And a couple of those teams, they made trades on Wednesday. So coming up, Nick and I are going to talk about the moves that were made throughout the NFL because it got a little crazy on Wednesday afternoon. Stay tuned. A lot coming up on Locked On NFL. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season's back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. This year, me and Locked On Ravens are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. One of my favorite features, new guillotine leagues. They just dropped, and every week, the lowest-scoring teams eliminated, and the last one standing wins. Whether you're all in on something new or you like sticking to head-to-head leagues or jumping into public leagues, Yahoo's got you covered. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. Kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. With the season around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If more into the classics, you can still play head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Back here on Locked On NFL, Kevin Ostreicher, Nick Cattle still diving into all the NFL content and coverage you need here over on the Locked On NFL podcast. Filling in for the madman Tyler Rowland today, giving you that double shot of NFL Express so you can check out Tony Wiggins in the barbershop in the afternoon every single weekday as well. Nick, let's talk about a couple of these trades that we saw across the NFL on Wednesday. Not the biggest in the world. We're not talking Micah Parsons. We're not talking Terry McLaurin. These are just some wide receivers we're going to dive into in the second part of the show that probably just depth pieces at this point. Let's start off with Sky Moore. Pretty high draft pick of the Chiefs a couple of years ago. The Chiefs move off of him to the San Francisco 49ers, who have been dealing with some injury situations. Marcus Robinson just got suspended for a couple of games. Obviously, Brandon Ayuk is slated to return right around week 6. So they need some depth. They need some help there. They made a move for Sky Moore. And Chris Clark over at Locked On Chiefs, he reacted to that move. So I want to play that. Then we'll talk about it.
Kansas City trades Sky Moore to the San Francisco 49ers for a swap of 6th and 7th round picks in 2027. That is the news that is breaking as of this moment right now. Kansas City is trading their former second-round pick wide receiver that wasn't making this roster to a team that is decimated with injuries and just got dealt another issue at the wide receiver position with DeMarcus Robinson going to be suspended for the first 3 games of the season. Kansas City moves on from Sky Moore. This is a move that is not really too surprising for Kansas City, considering he was not making this roster. But it is a move that I'm a little surprised happened because I didn't think that somebody would be trading something to get Sky Moore. His 88-yard punt return touchdown probably got him a new gig in San Francisco. Much more coming on Locked On Chiefs later.
Chris made a good point about the special teams impact that I'm sure San Francisco feels like he can make here. There are a couple of ways you can approach kind of those depth moves in the offseason around this time, Nick. It's either you can wait for cut down day. There are always going to be guys that get cut that maybe you don't expect to be, and you can wait for whether it's younger players, waivers, or vets. Obviously, you can choose where they want to go. But for Sky Moore, someone that's been a pretty decent disappointment in Kansas City after a lot of high expectations. And Chris seems pretty elated Kansas City was able to get anything for him, considering how it went for him over there over the first couple of years of his career.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the 49ers are just desperate, so they're showing the urgency. I don't think they have the time to wait the week until cut down day. I think they're looking at this and saying, okay, Cowing's banged up. Pearsall got banged up at practice a day or two ago. You mentioned the other guys with the Robinson suspension, and obviously Ayuk, week 5, week 6, maybe week 10, according to Kyle Shanahan. Sounds like he has no idea when Ayuk is going to get back and what will he look like when he gets back. So you're really desperate to get guys in the building to start working in the offense. So I think that's why where Sky Moore is somebody who you can pluck pretty easily and get that deal done just to have a body. I don't think they're looking at Sky Moore as somebody as like a number 2 or a 3. I think they're looking at him as a depth piece. I don't think they're done. I would imagine they're going to add at least one other wide receiver. And, you know, this is a big season, Kevin, for Kyle Shanahan and for Brock Purdy. Debo's gone, as you mentioned earlier. Can they get more out of Pearsall? Can he stay healthy? What do they get from Ayuk when he returns? And you start looking at Kittle. He ain't getting any younger. Trent Williams is still really good, but he's now in his late 30s. So it feels like almost a do-or-die season for the Niners.
It does. And you know, considering the health situation that it has been for them, I think a lot of people at this point just kind of write them off and are like, yeah, you know, they're just going to get injured again. And I know Debo's no longer on the team, but again, like Christian McCaffrey, that's kind of been the book on him. What's your personal opinion on the 49ers? Do you think that they have a shot this year, or do you think that it's just going to be like another year? Everybody's tapping the Rams right now. That's the team everybody's talking about in the NFC West. Do you think San Francisco has a shot at all to challenge them at this point?
I mean, I do, because I think now, I mean, if you asked me this question 2 or 3 weeks ago, I would say I would lean heavily towards the Rams. But the Stafford thing, look, I know he came back and he's practiced once or twice now. I'm still concerned. You're talking about somebody in his late 30s who obviously they had to wait longer than they wanted to wait to get him out on the practice field, which is not the best sign. You hope that he gets through the season. But then I would say the Niners have a shot. I wouldn't give them a great shot at it, frankly. They've got to stay healthy. They've got to make sure that Brock Purdy is the guy that they're paying, because they paid him a decent amount of money. And there are certain analytics that tell you that he's, you know, better than people think. And then there's other things like, well, he's got this great supporting cast and Shanahan as the play caller. And really, to me, it's also about the Niners defense. Robert Saleh is terrific, but they have a really, really young defense. I mean, they stockpiled guys out of the draft. And are those guys going to be able to develop quick enough to make a significant impact? To me, that's also a question. So I would still pick the Rams and keep the fingers crossed that Stafford's healthy. But I would put the Niners in there with pretty much everybody else. That division's, I think, a little muddied once you get past the Rams.
Yeah, I think San Francisco can make a wild card push. You know, in terms of winning the division, I would also pick the Rams. I'm with you there, Nick. But you're right. Like their defensive line is very young. You know, I think 2 or 3 rookies could start for them this season on their D line, which, you know, obviously you still have Nick Bosa, but, you know, you're trying to kind of mold together 2 eras of 49ers football here, kind of what was old and those Super Bowl teams and the appearances. And then now you got all this young talent coming in that you hope can reach the level that some of these veterans are already at. And sometimes that can be a pretty dicey proposition when it comes down to it. But a team that is maybe not so much in that NFC playoff hunt is the New Orleans Saints, but that's not stopping them from acquiring players and trying to get their team as good as they needed to get here. They made a trade with the Denver Broncos for a wide receiver. So Ross Jackson, he reacted to that. I'm going to play that clip here, then we'll talk about it.
The New Orleans Saints finally have their big-bodied wide receiver in Devonta Bailey. This is a 6'5", 210-pound, reliable hand possession, but good speed and deep threat ability type of wide receiver coming over from the team the New Orleans Saints are about to play against, the Denver Broncos. This is days after trading a defensive tackle to the team they just played against in the Jacksonville Jaguars. So funny how the schedule kind of aligned with the transactions there. But you add together the big-bodied size, the reliable hands, and the fact that he also caught 60% of his contested catch opportunities last year. And this was a clear need for the New Orleans Saints. Now, especially at the wide receiver position. Now, they might have overpaid a little bit, sending a 4th-round pick for 2026 and a 2027 7th-round pick for a 28-year-old second-year guy that was drafted in the 7th round of last year's draft. But clearly, they were really, really high on Devonta Bailey. We'll break him down some more over on Locked On Saints.
All right, so you heard it here first. Locked On NFL. The Saints are winning the Super Bowl this year. This is the move that they were waiting on. But no, in all seriousness, Nick, the thing with the Saints is obviously they're just trying to figure out their quarterback position. Spencer Rattler, Tyler Shuck. To me, Denver moving on from Bailey. They have Cortland Sutton. They have high hopes for guys like Troy Franklin and Marvin Mims, and it feels like there just wasn't room, or at least the role that maybe they expected Bailey to play when they drafted him just wasn't open for him anymore. They get some value again. I think Denver got a pretty good return here, and the Saints, I mean, they can take swings on potential, but hey, those mid-round picks, I mean, I think they're important for teams that are trying to get young talent in there. So what are your thoughts on this move?
I think it was an overpay. Now, I know somebody said, oh, well, there were other teams interested in Bailey, and that's why the Saints had to pay the price they paid. If I'm the Saints, I would imagine that if you're being realistic with yourself, you know that you're going to be one of the worst teams in football. And so a 4th-round pick, that could be at the top of the 4th round, which is pretty significant. And so that's a pretty valuable pick to me for a guy like Bailey. Now, I'm not saying Bailey can't help them. I'm sure he will. The Saints just need talent. That's why they're looked at as the way they're looked at. And you're right about the Broncos. I mean, if you've got Sutton, Franklin, and Mims as your 1, 2, 3, then do you have the opportunity to pick up a 4th-round pick for somebody like Bailey? If you have that opportunity, you've got to take it, right? I mean, how do you turn that deal down? Because he's your 4th guy at best at the position. So to get a 4th-round pick and a future lottery ticket for a guy who's not really a big part of your plans, it makes sense. And I would also say that, Sean Payton knows what he's doing, especially when it comes to the offensive side of the football. So if he tells me Bailey's expendable, then I'm going to believe Bailey's expendable.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you there. An interesting name that hasn't been signed yet, Nick, and there are a lot of teams looking for wide receiver help right now. The Vikings obviously are in a precarious situation with their receivers. Apparently Adam Thielen could potentially be an option for them. Carolina receiver there. But Amari Cooper has not been signed yet. That's a guy that was traded to Buffalo last season. Really, his role was on and off for them, and honestly was more off. He didn't really play a ton towards the end of the season. We know Cooper's had his fair share of injury issues, drop issues as well for Cooper. Is this a guy that you think could help a wide receiver needed team? He's still like the pedigree. He has the stats. He's been there. He's done that. But he might just be waiting for an opportunity is my thing with Cooper right now. What do you think?
It's kind of interesting when you look at Cooper. I mean, I think before the deal to Buffalo, you would say, oh, absolutely. Like, why not? Why not Amari Cooper? He feels like a great fit for really anybody looking for a veteran receiver. He's certainly not a number 1 anymore.
Yeah.
But I mean, you go back to 2023, 2022. This is somebody who played at a pretty high level given the circumstances in Cleveland. And then last year just feels like, as you mentioned, after that trade to Buffalo, he just went MIA. And it was almost as if he aged overnight. And was that because of the situation? It feels that way. It's tough to believe that the guy who, put up 70+ catches in 2023 fell off a cliff that quickly. People might think he's like in his mid-30s at this point, but he's only 31. So, I mean, 31, you start hitting your 30s at the wide receiver position. Yes, you start to decline most of the time. But to go from 70+ catches to, 45 or so last year, pretty big drop. for a guy who's 31 years old and still looked like he had plenty of gas left in the tank when he was in Cleveland. So it'll be interesting. But the NFL must feel a certain way about him because, as you said, he's not on a team right now. And I think if a team called him, he would take the deal at this point in late August.
Yeah, and I know for a lot of different guys, sometimes it is about opportunity where they're waiting for an injury or cut down day and say, okay, hey, now I have a role here. But for Cooper, I mean, it genuinely is confusing kind of what happened to him in Buffalo. It's not like the Bills had a number one receiver last season like a Stephon Diggs. So obviously, Nick is now, you might be familiar with Stephon Diggs a little bit now as he is in New England, but it seems like when they acquired him, like there was opportunity and there were snaps and there were targets, but just seemingly never really went that way. But for Cooper, we will see. For the Jets, we are certainly seeing what their plan is on the defensive line. They made a couple of trades yesterday, so we're going to talk about the Jets and where they currently stand in the NFL, as well as the Buccaneers with a couple of injury news and notes. So stay tuned. A lot coming up on Locked On NFL. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. These days, it feels like there's advice for everything: cold plunges, gratitude journals, screen detoxes. But how do you know what actually works for you? With so much information online about mental health and wellness, it can be overwhelming to figure out what's true and what will actually help. That's where talking to a licensed therapist through BetterHelp can make all the difference. You get real personalized guidance instead of just guessing based on something you saw on social media. And therapy isn't just for navigating major challenges. It's also about building positive coping skills and learning how to set boundaries and having just a professional to talk things through with and help cut through the noise and keep you focused on what matters most. With over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, serving more than 5 million people. It's easy to fit into your schedule, just a click to connect, and you can even switch therapists anytime if you need to. Talk it out with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. We are back. It is Locked On NFL. Kevin Oestreicher and Nick Cattle still rocking out with you here on this Friday. Nick, I know being an AFC East representative, the Jets are a team that are always a curious one to talk about and keep tabs on.
Yeah.
I love the move for Aaron Glenn. I think that will hopefully result in a culture shift for them. But for what they have roster-wise, Justin Fields is their quarterback. But on the defensive line, they clearly felt like they needed more. Next to Quinnen Williams, they bring in Harrison Phillips from the Vikings, Jawan Briggs from the Browns, both on Wednesday afternoon. John Butchko, he talked about Justin Fields and the Jets situation. So I want to play that, and then I'm curious to hear our thoughts on where we feel like the Jets are and if they can maybe make a sneaky run.
In all seriousness, one thing that seriously concerned me watching the preseason game was that Justin Fields seemed unaware that there were Jets receivers other than Garrett Wilson. Do you think that says more about Fields' inability to see the field, a lack of good offensive scheming, or just a general lack of receiving talent on this roster? Well, I think it's a combination of things. But number one, it's that Fields only threw 5 passes in an exhibition game. And I think under any circumstances, it's very dangerous to try and read too much into a 5-pass sample size. And that's especially true in exhibition season, because you have to remember, this is a practice for the Jets. These are essentially practice games where they're trying to figure out what they do well and what they don't do well.
So clearly the Jets fan base is, they have their opinions on Justin Fields here. They look, they want it to be great. So of course, preseason, of course, Nick is the tell all. You always overreact to the preseason. That seems to be what everybody does here. Look, 5 passes, John is exactly correct. It is not enough to gauge the meter on where Justin Fields is right now. The thing about training camp, the thing about the preseason is that you do use that as opportunities. You don't want to experiment with something and try to figure things out and develop chemistry when the games start to matter. You do that when it doesn't matter in practice. So right. With what the Jets have done this offseason, clearly they're making moves. They have very good young talent with guys like Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner, etc. Is this a team, and maybe speaking from the AFC East side of things, do you think that they're a team that could challenge for that second or third spot in the division? Or do you think that teams like the Patriots, who have added an influx of talent, the Dolphins, who honestly kind of feel like they're on the downtrend, what's the AFC East view of the Jets right now?
It feels to me that when you get past the Bills, it's pretty much a wide open division for the other 3 teams. And You could talk me into believing any of those three teams finishing behind the Bills. You can't talk me into believing that any of those teams will actually finish better than the Bills unless something happens to Josh Allen, which none of us want to see for obvious reasons. The Jets, two most important people in an organization to me when you talk week to week is the head coach and the quarterback. I don't know if I'm buying into Justin Fields. I liked him coming out of college. I saw some flashes in Chicago. But I think we now know who Justin Fields is as an NFL quarterback. I don't think he's a top 15, 20 guy in the league. So I got questions there. And Aaron Glenn, I always have this conversation, Kevin, with people. Fans will always try to tell me, oh, this guy's going to be great. This guy's going to be an awesome head coach. Did you see what Detroit's defense did last year or the year before? Did you see how they handled all the injuries? And I have no idea how Aaron Glenn's going to be as a head coach because he's never done the job. And somebody can be a terrific coordinator and be a terrible head coach. So you've got a rookie head coach and a quarterback that I think limits your offensive ceiling. So it's going to be on the defense. And, they're trying to get people up on that defensive line to try to solidify it with Quinnen Williams. But, I could buy the Jets winning, let's say, 8 or 9 games on the defense. And they got a good offensive line, I think, too. But I could also see them win 4 or 5 games and Aaron Glenn struggle in his first season as a head coach.
Yeah, you can tell the culture is certainly better. Feels like there are just better vibes with the Jets. But you're right. Like you can't. Whenever a head coach is hired, I mean, Josh McDaniels, you know about Josh McDaniels, terrific coordinator, is a head coach. It has not gone very well for Josh McDaniels. Like there are those specific types of coaches, and that's fine. Like it's totally fine to be one of the top coordinators in the league, and that is kind of your ceiling. But we're going to see, obviously there's the connection with Glenn and the Jets that obviously spans very far back, far past today. But at this point, like the Jets right now are banking on the potential of a Justin Fields. They're not necessarily married to him for 5 years here, right? But at the same time, I know that fan base has grown restless. I mean, it's been really years now, years and years and years and years and years. So hopefully for their sake, they can get some positives this season and Glenn can show a little bit of why the Jets brought him in. A team in the NFC in a division that really it's not looking great in the NFC South right now. We talked about that with the Saints a little bit in the second part of the show, but the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they seem to be the favorite there. And honestly, they probably should be considering how last season went. Baker Mayfield and all the talent they have, Mike Evans. Now, Chris Godwin, there was some big news on him, big news on Tristan Wirfs, and also some big news on Jalen McMillan, some positive and some negative. You got positives on both Godwin and Wirfs, while some negative news came down on Jalen McMillan. So James Yarko of Locked On Bucs, he talked about the McMillan news, and I want to get our thoughts, Nick, coming out on the other side about where we feel like the Bucs can finish this year.
Jalen McMillan is going to miss extended time and start the season on injured reserve. As Todd Bowles told the media, the wide receiver Jalen McMillan suffered a severe neck strain and will miss extended time. Rick Stroud of the Tampa Bay Times then followed that up by reporting that McMillan will start the season on injured reserve with a return designation, but might not be back until after the Week 9 bye.
Well, that's bad news for McMillan. The Buccaneers, obviously, they drafted a wide receiver in the first round this year. Yeah. So obviously with Evans and Godwin still, and you have the young influx of talent there, I think they will be okay at that position. The news from Tristan Wirfs is that he will start the season on the active roster, which is good news. They activated both Godwin and Wirfs off of the physically unable to perform list. The Buccaneers are an interesting case study for me, Nick, because obviously I think there is some conversation about Todd Bowles and is he the right man to take the Buccaneers to the next level? I think he's a good coach, but there are just those coaches that have a ceiling here. Obviously, we talked about the Jets, and Todd Bowles certainly had an experience with the Jets a couple of years ago. Where are you on the Bucs right now in terms of their NFC South chances? Do you like maybe the Falcons more than them because of the potential of Michael Penix? What's kind of your thoughts?
I think the Bucs are the best team in the division. And, if they stay healthy, they should win that division. As far as the McMillan injury, bummer for him personally. But as you mentioned, Kevin, if there's one position that you feel like the Bucs can deal with an injury, it is wide receiver, especially now that Godwin's coming off the PUP. You've got Evans. You've got one of my favorite players from this past year's draft, Emeka Egbuka, who was terrific at Ohio State. So, they've got three guys. If Godwin's healthy, you've got Evans, Godwin, and Ibuka. I don't even know how you fit Jalen McMillan. I certainly wish the Patriots picked Jalen McMillan instead of Jalen Polk last year, the way things kind of unfolded. But the Bucs will be fine offensively, especially now with Wirfs. And that to me is huge. Wirfs was expected to miss at least the start of the season. But the fact that he's ready to come back and he's an offensive lineman, those guys will play with one leg if they can. So, he can ramp up rather quickly. He's the man on the offensive line. So Baker will throw one or two picks that'll drive you crazy every once in a while, but it'll also keep you excited to make some plays, and he's got the confidence. And so I think the Bucs, again, if they stay healthy, they should win that South division, because the other teams you look at and yikes.
Yeah, it's Tampa's division. It is Tampa. Now, the next step for them, obviously, is what can they do in the postseason, and are they good enough to play with teams like the Eagles and the Lions and, the Commanders and those types of teams? That's still a question that needs to be answered. But, Baker can put together another season. You mentioned a pick or two that he'll throw, but largely he has resurrected his career in an incredible way in Tampa, and hopefully he can take them to where they want to go. Nick, I appreciate you hopping on with me. Thank you for all the conversation and the insight. We're going to take a little break here for a couple days on Locked On NFL, but we'll be back on Monday diving into all of the latest news, notes, and NFL happenings. So be sure to hit the like and subscribe button in video form. And if you want more of Nick, be sure to follow along and subscribe over at Locked On Patriots. We also are available wherever you get your podcasts in audio form, and we will see you right back here soon on Locked On NFL.